be screwed. Feel my own adrenaline, yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah.
Hello and welcome back, fellow anime lovers, to Cypherfics. I am delighted to have you join us once again in the world of fanfiction and fantasy. This is the 5th part of What If Issei, Rias Enter Overlord. Special note, this fanfic is written in a masterpiece of I4MD347H and Zaralann on FANFICTIONnet. Do check and support the author too. Now smash the like, share and subscribe button for more. Also press the bell icon so that you never miss such great parts. Thanks for the introduction. Now let's dive into the world. Issei, don't you think you're a bit too HRD on Lady Rainier and the others? Asia asked as Momonga bought Asia ice cream, handing her a cone of vanilla in hand as he kept the chocolate one for himself. They were in the shopping district of Kyo, back in the same area where Momonga encountered Deodora. If you want my honest opinion, I would say that they deserve even worse, Momonga admitted. Actually, now that I thought about it, I have barely harmed a feather. Sure, I've threatened them, but I haven't harmed them physically yet. That excluded his undead that engaged them earlier in the training room. They were guilty on account of treachery, 2 attempted murders, and, worst of all, pure stupidity. Momonga had all rights to punish them, to conduct all kinds of cruel experiments on their sorry beings. Momonga would have chopped their limbs off and healed them over and over again if he could, throwing potions at them to see if their limbs regrow. To see how their limbs regrow and inspect the kinks behind the mechanisms if he hadn't met Asia. But I think you have punished them enough. Asia shook her head as she started licking her ice cream. As the Lord above states in his teachings, everyone deserves to be forgiven. I think they have suffered enough under the eyes of the Lord. She lightly casted her usual radiant smile. Oh my God, she's too pure, Momonga grimaced as when she shone her holy radiance. At this rate, Momonga might be purified by her holy attack until his mental HP hits 0. There was no way for Momonga to have immunity against this kind of purity. I don't know. I am not the kind of person that forgives such serious crimes. Didn't the Lord state something about punishing criminals until they repent in full or something? Momonga asked as they walked out of the ice cream shop. Momonga did nothing to them besides forceful confinement until today. He fed them, gave them a room and bed, and he didn't mistreat them in any way. I don't think the Lord is as cruel as you think, Issei. I believe that if you give them a chance, you might find it in yourself to forgive them. Forgive them. Momonga wasn't exactly sure if they were truly ready for his forgiveness yet. Considering their poor and faulty intelligence, Momonga was more concerned if they would try something as equally dumb as murdering Issei without attempting to recruit him, like hurrying to Azazel and report everything before he finds out and kills them. He recalled a saying from Punito Mo on this. It should be something like what MSTR fears is not another MSTR, but the idiot since he has no idea what the idiot will do or something like that. Well, however, Momonga did need to start building a trusting relationship with them at some point. If they managed to survive for 7 days without dying, then he would consider revoking their status as prisoners. I will consider that, assuming they didn't try anything stupid or something. I don't know what to do if they did croak from escaping to their former boss. Momonga chuckled as he imagined them trying to contact Azazel via a message-like spell, only to die before uttering the first word. It was very possible and likely. He would at least find some humor in that, at the very least. Asia giggled a little from his attempt at humor. What is the spell you used on them anyways? Asia asked, curious to know about Momonga's magic. Will it really? Asia hesitated as if the very word kill made her uncomfortable. Momonga sighed as he rubbed the back of his head. Really, to feel so concerned with the idiot trio despite them treating her like a sacrificial lamb was a strength Momonga could not attain. To him, it was galling even to consider forgiveness for people like them. Still, if Asia would forgive them, Momonga would make the 3 idiots prove themselves worthy of her forgiveness. Well, frankly, I have no idea if it will work. It is a potent spell, one which I would usually use only as a last resort. Right now, I am leaving their fates to God's whim, Momonga shrugged. The context of the Momonga's contingency wish was if any of the three betray his trust and/or willingly strive to endanger his well-being in any way, may they all terminate via death. Momonga had no idea if the spell would trigger from mere deliberation or a stray thought. Thus, Momonga handed their fates to God for now. If the spell did not work his way, if there was a loophole they could exploit but not discover, then at least their fear of him would keep them in check for the time being. Oh. Is it like a curse? Asia asked. What? Well, not exactly. I can cast curses, but they cannot be used as a contingency. Momonga replied. Technically, I made the spell function like a curse. I just don't know any other conventional spell that could act as a safeguard. Now that Momonga thought about it, he didn't tell her much about how his spells worked. Not even he knew how he could cast tier magic spells in learned details. He acquired those spells via the game mechanics in Yggdrasil, the same way Asia learned them when he introduced her to the system in general. I see. Your magics are very interesting. Asia looked intrigued by the Yggdrasil magics at work. Maybe Momonga should give her a full course on it later on when he had the time. Talking about the magic in detail outside in public would paint a very unwanted picture of him if others eavesdrop on their conversation. Momonga hummed as he rubbed his chin in thought. He wondered if he should tell her. He should give her an item that protects her against mental attacks if he could. He took a large lick of his chocolate ice cream first, letting the sweet choco cream melt on his tongue for a moment as he looked down at his shadow. Well, I know a lot of spells. I don't know its effectiveness compared to the magic here, but I have an idea some spells will be strong to mimic. Momonga informed her. As he took another lick, Momonga stopped as he perked his head, sensing something off behind them. He turned around to find the source, finding only groups of standing and walking civilians, either chatting or loitering around to pass the time. He scratched his head for a moment, wondering if it was just his imagination playing tricks on him or his augmented senses triggering from some hostile presence. What he didn't know was that he missed the sight of a white hair poking out from behind a wall around one corner, or the two other girls hiding amongst the crowd with their backs facing Momonga, both hoping that he didn't recognize them. Momonga blinked as he turned his attention back to Asia, deciding to ponder on that matter later. Well, I will tell you more about it when we get back. But for now, is there anywhere you want to visit? We still haven't gotten you new clothes now that I think about it after that fiasco with that one devil. Momonga rubbed his head sheepishly. Are you seeing this? Mariama asked as she peeked around the corner, spotting Issei walking with a girl. A very cute girl, in fact. Cades extensively nodded as they stared at the pervert and the potential victim. When they were out shopping for new clothes, Mariama and Cades caught the sight of Issei by chance. They nearly gave their position away when they saw Issei of all people walking in the shopping district with a girl in tow, something they never thought was possible in their lives considering it was Issei. By now, they were stalking him with criticizing eyes, Cades crouching below Mariama with their eyes heavily glued onto Issei and the unknown girl who was licking her vanilla ice cream cone. They have a sneaking suspicion that the girl was the reason why Issei lost his energy. The only explanation they had was that they were sure of it. They must expose Issei for being not only a pervert but also a potential lolicon. And ARPST in general. They must protect the girl from Issei at all costs and obtain proof of his true, insidious nature. However, Issei's senses seemed to be a bit too sharp for their liking. He had almost caught them a few times, but they managed to hide within the crowd or in the occasional alleyway by now. Not only that, they could barely hear their conversation, but the words like magic and devils did slip through the gaps. Were they talking about a role-playing game or something? They did take him as an anime geek, but they didn't think he would be this engrossed, and to think the girl was one as well. She didn't look the part, though. As they followed the two, they saw Issei leading her into a clothing store. Was he taking her out to shop for her sake? That was unexpectedly gentlemanlike of him to take a girl out and spend money for her. They didn't expect that. While they wanted to get in and spy on them some more, Mariama and Cades did not want Issei to catch them red-handed. Issei was way too aware of their liking, so the best they could do was peek through the big see-through window. When they emerged from the shop after a long while, Issei and the blonde girl were holding bags of clothes in their hands, the latter smiling happily, her beam like a glittering gem. Where did Issei find someone like her, they thought? But they were out in the open with little people around them. They realized Miriama and Cadiz were so engrossed in their curiosity, they pushed themselves in the wide open. Miriama, what should we do? Cadiz whispered as she frantically shot her head back and forth between Issei and Miriama in panic. Act natural, Miriama whisper shouted back as she looked around the street, looking as natural as possible. Cadiz did not know how to look natural right now. Besides, it was already too late. Miriama? Cadiz? Issei just called out to them. Miriama and Cadiz flinched. Hey, Issei. Ooh, how are you doing? Miriama replied with an incredibly fake response. Cadiz sheepishly waved her hand at him with an awkward giggle, hoping that he didn't notice that they were tailing him. What are you two doing here? You're here for clothes, too? Issei asked as he bit the last waffly piece of his ice cream cone in one crunch, chewing as he calmly awaited their response. They quickly jumped at this lifeline Issei provided them. Ahahaha, why yeah. Cadiz and I wanted to try out new clothes. Heard there's new dresses in this shop we want to try out. Issei blinked as the blonde girl tugged on his sleeve. Issei, do you know them? She asked. Miriama and Cadiz nearly felt their hearts melt at her voice. She sounded just as sweet as she looked now that they properly listened. There was no way Issei found something this precious under their noses. Oh, these are my classmates, members of the Kendo Club. The one with brown hair is Miriama, and the other is Cadiz. Although it is my first time meeting them outside of class. Issei mused as he tapped his chin with slight suspicion. Usually, they would stay away from me at all costs. Miriama and Cadiz nearly swallowed the phantom lumps in their throats. He wasn't wrong in this case, but there was no way they would leave a girl this sweet under Issei's care. Ahaha, Issei, care to introduce your friend to us? Miriama asked as Cadiz nodded fervently. Issei looked at Asia for a moment as he widened his eyes a little before they softened. His reaction made the girls freeze on the spot. Did he learn of their tailing him? Issei simply stared at them for a while as he pursed his lips. Well, it is a long story, but I don't suppose it will hurt. Issei gestured to the girl. Miriama, Cadiz, my friend here is Asia Argento. She is a wandering nun of sorts, but she was kicked out. I found her in the streets by accident. I couldn't leave her in the streets because of it, so I left her under my care for the time being. The Kendo duo could not believe their ears as they stared at Asia stupefied. Their jaws nearly fell on the floor as they processed what Hyodo just said. That guy has a girl living under his roof, and that girl was somewhat attached to him. They refused to accept this. Issei must be taking advantage of such a holy maiden he had found. Why are you looking at me with those eyes? Issei asked as he stepped back a little. Issei, where do you live? Cadiz asked as her expression turned serious. What? What do you? Asia, how is Issei treating you? Miriama interrupted Issei as she smiled sweetly at Asia. Asia hesitantly stammered as she poked her fingers together. That was not a good sign for them as their eyes slowly narrowed. He is always nice to me. His parents are nice, too. They've been taking good care of me since, Why must she sound so honest when saying it? If she told them like that without showing signs of abuse, they would almost look at Issei in a different light. But they refused to let it go just yet. They must confirm Asia's story with their own eyes. Momonga was concerned. The girls from the Kendo Club were following him back home, and he had no way of convincing them to go away. Miriama was lazing at his nape with an intense stare while Cadiz was giving a painful glare as if she was staring at a pervert. He wanted to tell them to go home, and he couldn't bring himself to wipe their memories in public despite the pressure. So he planned to bring them in his home, have the three idiots mind wipe them, and then drop them somewhere in Kyo. Wait, he had no idea where their homes were. Now Momonga was even more concerned. He hoped that Asia wouldn't mind him wiping their memories after ambushing them in his home. He really didn't wish to deal with the guilt of performing something so unsightly in front of her. So, Momonga wasn't sure how to start a conversation with these girls. It was very awkward, and they seemed still to hate him to the bone, his undead bones. Their terms weren't very amicable due to Issei's blunders in school. What is the Kendo Club like? Momonga had no idea what to talk about, so he spoke the first thing that came to his mind, which was his curiosity for the club they attend. What do you think? Thanks to your pervert friends, we can't change in peace without worrying about peeping toms and hidden cameras. Miriama glowered, placing her hands on her hips. Momonga kind of expected that sort of response. Ahaha, well, I can't say I apologize on their behalf, or that I will. Momonga just wished they would stop bashing his reputation from time to time. The awkward silence returned once more. Momonga wished this kind of oppressive atmosphere would dispel already. It was grinding his nerves. Is there a reason why you want to come to my home? Momonga wondered how Issei's mother and father would react to him bringing in more girls. To make sure you're not doing anything funny to Asia, Miriama retorted. Or that you're making her do lewd things, Kades followed. Stop, please. I'm not that kind of person, Momonga felt like crying on the inside. Their words hurt worse than Touch Me's world break. Looking to his right, he saw Asia giving him an apologetic smile and an awkward chuckle, sympathizing with his suffering. But, I'm not. I'm really not. His intentions were pure, they really were. I don't believe you, Miriama rejected. You must be preparing her for something sinister and perverted, Kades nodded in agreement. They were as stubborn as Yamaiko in a sense. No, more like Bukibuku Chigama to Peruasino in finding his top-secret Ero stash or something like that. Just what would it take to get them off his back and convince them of his innocence? As he mulled over his dilemma, he and the others heard a voice calling out from behind them. Anomaly. The voice was soft and feminine. Despite hearing the disarming tone, Momonga froze in his step. However, when the voice reached his ears, he could feel his instincts cry out to him as a dreadful feeling, a creeping doom, crawled over his mind. It wasn't something he felt before in his life, but he could tell that it was his dragon instincts screaming at him, a primal shriek that wails in the presence of a mighty being, something far above his current level. There was no fanfare, no warning, and not even a sound as Momonga suddenly felt as if the weight of the whole world was placed upon his shoulders. He need not turn around to know the danger behind him. And there were civilians around him. There was no time for deliberation. Gate. Consequences hold no meaning to the dead, so Momonga, with one arm, quickly opened a portal to his secret bunker. Then, with sudden rudeness he would later apologize for, he unceremoniously grabbed the shoulders of the Kendo girls and threw into the open maw of the gateway. Wah! I Issei? They screamed as they vanished in the void of the gate. Asia, no time to explain. Jump in, Momonga, panicked, shouted. Asia, surprised by his sudden shift of behavior, quickly followed the girls inside the gate without question as the gate closed behind her, understanding the situation the moment she saw the portal Momonga showed her before. Momonga taught her well to flee on the side of the gate, drilling in her protocols and countermeasures against any case of PK-like situations. Apologizing to them in his head, Momonga closed his eyes for a second to prepare his spells, cycling through his pre-planned spells at his disposal in case a foe did find him. Albeit, he did not expect that the assailant to possess a presence that could almost grind mountains to powder. Dozens of spells, alongside an even greater number of skills, each and every one on the tip of his fingers as he whirled around, and almost stumbled when he saw the owner of the presence. What? His brain-to-mouth filter had stopped working for a moment upon gazing at the absurd picture before him. Standing on the sidewalk underneath the late afternoon sun, a pair of gray eyes linked to his, from a tiny figure that could be mistaken for a little girl, if not for the number of chills racing down his spine, that stood before him. Long straight black hair cascading down her back and a long gothic Lolita dress that was seemingly missing its front in black and purple colors, all of which Momonga was sure Perorancino would have approved. She wore a pair of white pumpkin panties, and seemingly strips of duct tape crossed over her nipples, which set off very strong alarm bells in Momonga's head. I think I'm entitled to some prison time as a convicted PD flea if I continue looking at this. A random thought ran through his head as he reflexively made sure to not lower his gaze below her jawline, else penitentiary and shame await him. What are you? Her voice was monotonous, little to no emotion attached to her words, but not without some strange weight to it. A person? Momonga blinked, confused. The girl blinked slowly and tilted her head to the side slightly in a criminally adorable fashion. It was almost cute if not for the air seemingly warping and twisting from her sheer presence. It was the sheer luck of the draw that he used false data, life and false data, mana on himself as a part of his morning rituals every day now. He had no clue who she was, why she was here, or how the hell did someone like her manage to find him despite his meticulousness. But he didn't want her to know anything about him. Not only that, but he was also lucky that no eyewitnesses were present to see his gait, even though he had the three idiots to help wipe their memories. A PRGNNT pause intervened, almost visible, as he could practically see a question mark floating about the unknown girl's head before it straightened into an exclamation mark with a screeching sound of rusted metal being bent. Her head once more regaining its straightened position, and then her tiny and obviously and deceptively gentle-looking hand rose and pointed at him. Dragon. Her voice was still flat, but he could almost feel the accusation being thrown at him. Devil, unknown. His heart nearly jumped out of his chest as she flawlessly listed his three main racial sets, even if she substituted undead with an unknown for some reason. Ah, like a toppled tower of cards, Momonga's composure fell into an internalized screaming panic. Maybe a little bit? Further denial was moot, also probably suicidal considering his very soul, from guts to his instincts, screamed at Momonga the amount of danger compacted in the girl's little form. How he could come out alive in this scenario should she turn hostile, Momonga had nary a single clue. Unknown. She gave a slight nod as if in confirmation. What are you? Time to pull out his eloquent tongue. That exposition would take quite a lot of your while. But, long story short, you can describe me as one of those that are dead but still not dead. He was buying himself time. He must figure out a way to avoid any confrontation with this girl and a solution to conceal himself from her. I apologize for my poor exposition, but think of it as something on the borders of the realm beyond life for now. As a former salaryman, he would have chastised himself for tying his tongue in a knot, but his life was on the line, so he had no room to counter this appropriately. Momonga knew that his bullshit wouldn't buy enough time to find his solution, his escape. The truth was indefinitely out of the table, so he must resort to confusing her or lead her in a different direction with the sheer audacity of delivering a purposely crude exposition. It was a terrible plan, a horrible one. But he could not spare the luxury before the girl that radiates the aura of a world enemy. Skeleton. Her eyes seemed to be focused somewhere else, like they were looking past his flawed words and see. Momonga could almost feel her staring past through the eyes of Issei and into the eyes of the one wearing him. Could she see his undead avatar through his flesh? Alive, but not strange. I'm so not good with surprise encounters when facing situations he had failed to account for, like this one here where he was cornered with no room to escape. Momonga held not even a ghost of a chance as his skills in quick thinking and decision-making on the spot was subpar. She detected him through the layers of anti-divination and anti-detection abilities with contemptible ease, so escape was not an option. What else could he do? Ah, well, then please allow me to show my manners, he said in a friendly yet slightly strained tone. I am Hyodo Issei. I apologize for not introducing myself earlier, but I did not expect to receive a guest. The girl once more focused on him and looked him straight in the eyes, her head tilted in another direction as once more she seemed to think about what to answer. Off eyes. That told him literally nothing. You are strong, unique, alien. Does anything go by her? This could be just her feeling his races, but Momonga could tell that she was referring to his level, meaning his false data. Life and false data, mana, were utterly failing him. What was she? A game MSTR? Strong is relative, in my experience, but I consider myself well seasoned. I do have the utmost confidence in my ability to combat those of my level, however. Once more, and with a horrible abuse of his emotion suppression, he managed not to sound like he was about to CRP his heart out. You can say that I'm adept in maximizing the efficiency of my abilities, instead, a professional. He only just noticed that her finger was still pointed at him in that accusing manner. He hoped that it was not the equivalent of an actual gun barrel aimed at him. Strong, she said once more in an almost accusing manner. What do you want? There was a pause as if a screech of an old vinyl record that was suddenly interrupted rang out. Momonga's mind blanched slightly at a seemingly random question. What? He blurted out, his mind failing to process what she meant by that properly. I give you what you want. She said it as if it was a fact. You help me reach silence and kill Great Red. Once more, his mind failed to process properly. He grasped at maximum, a third of the random contents that managed to reach his ears. Was she selling him some kind of a pitch? A recruiting attempt? What? After a lengthy conversation with Off-Eyes, Momonga felt as if he was being made a butt of some cosmic joke. There shouldn't be so much bad luck for one person in such a short PRD of time. Right now, he was still reeling from the whole mess with him being reborn in the most bizarre world possible, keeping his powers from the game, dealing with the forces of the underworld and the fallen. That mess with Asia also weighed him down, and the fact that, after he killed Deodora, now every creation and summon he had turned into some kind of FTSH art, and that did not include him giving a tour of his lair to one of the two strongest beings in the universe, or so Off-Eyes proclaimed. What is that? Off-Eyes asked as she pointed at what was once one of his liches. Greetings, father. Now it was a naked girl with white hair and gray skin in a tattered cloak, while a cross-shaped metal ornament hung on her back. Not only that, but she also held an item in the form of a book, rusty LTHR holding aged paper. A lick, he dryly answered. At least it was supposed to be not long ago. He honestly felt miserable about this whole mess. If someone from his guild was to see him now, there was no way he'll ever be able to live it down while a barrage of mocking laughter murders his dignity to death. Ah, Off-Eyes gave a firm nod. From their sudden encounter in the street, Off-Eyes refused to let go of his hand, making him look like an older sibling leading his FTSH-heavy little sister. Hyodo, came two voices. Momonga felt a new wave of dread as he saw the two girls that he earlier sent away through the gate running at him with fear in their eyes. Behind them he could see several skeletons giving chase. There was something almost comical here, except he wanted to cry instead of laugh. Wait, don't run. They mean no harm. Asia came running after them, her manner of running quite maiden-like, arms bent acutely with her clenched hands racing up and her steps soft. Momonga raised his hand, commanding the skeletons to stop in their tracks as Miriama and Kates ran to him and grabbed him by the shirt. What the hell is going on? Miriama shouted with frantic eyes. What did you do to us? You have a lot of explaining to do. Hyodo, Kates followed up with teary eyes. The two looked at the skeletons that were standing calmly behind them and Asia panting a little trying to catch her breath. It isn't what it looks like, Asia defended in a weak attempt to lie. Really? Then what does it look like? Isn't this a dungeon or something? Miriama retorted, flailing her finger at the metallic hallway and arcane ball of light decorating the walls. And it's full of skeletons. Why is it full of skeletons? No, perverse skeletons, pointing at the feminine, near-naked girls wearing lingeries of bones. Kates followed up as she and Miriama let go of Issei to yell at Asia, who was frantically trying to find a way to calm them down. They sound like a GG comedy duo, Momonga compared. As the two shouted at Asia in their panicking frenzy, Off-Eyes tugged on Momonga's hand. Who are they? She pointed at the Kendo girls. Acquaintances, both of whom I've dragged into my secret base from panic. Momonga grimaced. He thought it was a sound idea on impulse, throwing civilians here to protect them from harm. However, Momonga didn't consider using this dungeon to protect bystanders because the three idiots informed him that secrecy was imperative for the three factions. But from now on, he must prepare some space for future refugees. They're very noisy, Off-Eyes commented. Please bear with it. They'll calm down after they tire out. Momonga sighed, slightly nervous. He wasn't sure how Off-Eyes would tolerate the rants of two high school girls demanding answers from all this confusion. As he patiently waited for the Kendo duo to calm down, Miriama and Kates were heaving their breaths, both verbally exhausted of their retorts. Asia stood there, giving them an awkward smile all this time as they exhausted themselves. She did well weathering their outbursts, so he must provide her with something nice as a reward later. Are you done? Momonga asked as he gave a slightly apologetic smile to Asia. No, we are not done. You still have a lot of explaining to do, Hyodo. Miriama denied, toot sweet. Momonga sighed again as he pinched the bridge of his nose in an attempt to calm his nerves. He silently contemplated how to handle these two. Actually, this was his first time introducing civilians into the supernatural world. There was still the option to mind-wipe them, but he wanted to see how they could adapt to the truth of the supernatural world hiding under their noses. In a sense, he could use them as practice material on how to handle civilians. There was no risk involved in this idea, now that he thought about it. Alright, yes. Let's see, how should I start? Momonga wondered how he should start this. You can start by telling us who she is. Miriama pointed at Offeyes. And why are you holding her hand like that, you PD flea? Ketes pointed out. Their accusing tongues were still as sharp as knives, and they stabbed Momonga strong in the chest. Momonga was not sure how he was still not used to their verbal lashes. All right. However, Momonga must first accommodate them. He had a room in mind to calm their nerves, one he made for the 3 idiots and Asia in case of a full-scale war. In the hidden dungeon, there was a kitchen. It was made with the intensive purposes of allowing the residents to make their own food and store whatever consumables Momonga purchased or created with magic. There was a stove Momonga crafted himself, designed with the effect of microwaving or heating any food that required cooking. Hot circular rods of iron that generate enthalpy. As for ventilation to carry the fumes out, Momonga constructed a ventilation that leads to the nearest sewers. He found a way to mask the scent at the very least by covering the area of the sewers with his wish upon a star spell. He didn't think it would work when he did it, but the bullshit surprised him once again. It even masked the whole of the vent that leads to his secret base. The layout of the kitchen was simple and spacious, the floor made of marble while the walls were plated with star silver. The ceiling was left alone, but miniature spheres of arcane light possessing the color of the sun hung to light the room of its darkness. The fridge was also magical but lazily designed as a simple rectangular cube that cools the items stored within. Something he conceived on the spot. Instead of using solid materials, Momonga used a magic force field that insulates the cold temperatures around the shelves of food lying out in the open. Basically, the food stood on metal surfaces lined in rows on the wall, while contained in a translucent film of light blue, like certain products displayed in glass containers. One could simply reach in through the phantom glass and take whatever they need to eat. There was also a microwave on the counter next to the fridge, but it was store-purchased, powered by a stone that generates electricity in a sense behind the appliance, one that could only conduct electricity through steel and nothing else. He still couldn't believe that he made all this himself with wish upon a star. As for the current guests, Momonga sat with them around a table made of scarletite on which food stood for the guests to eat. Seated across Momonga was Miriama and Ketes, both of who were looking around the kitchen in awe and curiosity, while Offeyes and Asia sat next to Momonga, the first inspecting the room with similar interest. The 3 idiots were outside, although Momonga wasn't sure if they were alive or dead. However, their absence was a slide of relief. It spared him the misfortune of explaining to the girls why he imprisoned 3 women in his dungeon. The awkward silence was deafening, as Momonga reflects on how to present his supernatural side to the girls. He had construed multiple pre-planned explanations in case this happened, fortunately, when the time he must reveal himself to his family arrives. The problem was whether or not they would buy any of his words when they reached their ears. So, Miriama, Ketes, you two may ask your questions, Momonga spoke, breaking the awkward silence as the two gave him their full attention, broken off from the spell of curiosity. If they ask why he threw them here, Momonga wouldn't tell them it was because he expected a hostage situation or something along the lines of mass collateral casualties when Offeyes arrived. Still, he did not know that she came here in the hopes of recruiting him to her. Strange longing to achieve perfect isolation in what he could best describe as the void according to her broken explanation before he gave her the tour. He still could not wrap his head around Offeyes' backstory and her illogical plan to build an army of unstable individuals that, most of which if not all were psychopaths with too much time and power in their hands to do anything else. All to kill another dragon that stole her ubiquitous home. And that guy was just as strong as she was. Momonga classified Offeyes and this Great Red as world-class enemies of this bullshit universe, the kind that would one-shot him for even the slightest misstep. which was unfair as hell, just like the dungeons with countless one-hit kill traps the shitty devs made. She was the kind of op character that could illogically plow through anything a side character could muster with the power of plot armor, as Albert phrased when describing Touch Me. At least she didn't bother to one-shot him. As for her offer, Momonga had more than 1,000 reasons to refuse her. One good reason: her subordinates were not in their right minds, most of them being completely insane. Remnants of a rejected government that once ruled over the underworld, a collage of magician groups with vague motives to drive the world to suicide, and a hero faction. A frickin' hero faction. Why in God's name were there actual descendants of heroes amongst the group of homicidal maniacs hellbent on driving the world to ruin? That made absolutely no sense. Another to the pile of reasons why the world is bullshit. Not only that, but Momonga also did not think he was capable of helping the girl kill an endgame raid boss as he was now. He really did not want to join her if he could. The factions she recruited were barely functional as a cohesive unit if his initial impression of them held merit to the last letter, meaning Momonga would mix with them like oil to water, or vice versa. If he joined, he could imagine them pinning him in their crosshairs, send assassins to butcher his family members, and initiate a much more gruesome chain of events following. If they found out how to dominate undead, Momonga would otherwise be enslaved to the sub-faction that managed to get its hands on him, forcing him to summon his undead armies and leak all of his secrets to them. That was not a position he wanted to step in, no matter what Offeyes promised him. He had no idea how to deal with them just yet, and there was still so much he did not know about the limits of his abilities. He wanted to ask about their powers, but he needs to guide their soon-to-be conversation to that point after dealing with the Kendo duo. At least he managed to entertain Offeyes to stick around long enough to hear his response with the creative use of creation magic and showing her some trinkets from Yggdrasil. On the bright side, Miriama and Kates were calm enough to appreciate the layout of his dungeon, his days of strong work. Did you make all of this? Kates gestured to everything around her. The kitchen, the floors, walls, everything. Momonga could understand her feelings. He planned to improve the aesthetics of this place one day if he could. Yeah, somehow. Although, don't expect me to know how I did it. Momonga nodded with a sigh. He stole a glance at Offeyes, wondering how she reacted to that. She looked at him with that same impassive gaze, an unreadable mask that showed no emotions. Looking at Asia, she was drinking a vanilla shake he made for her with Wish Upon a Star. She looked very cute drinking from a straw. You did this all? And not knowing how? I mean, just how? Miriama asked while gesturing to his base made via what amounted to back alley quackery. Good question. I want to know that myself. Even he could not explain how he managed to retain his avatar's power and more. That's the question I can't answer myself. Honestly, I have no idea. I woke up with the ability to use it and without any memory to whoever I was beforehand. That was technically half true, but it also revealed nothing about what happened before his awakening. Wait, no memory of what? Kates asked, catching Momonga's point. The Hyodo Issei you see now is nothing more than an amnesiac trying to fit in the shoes of a corpse. I am basically a stranger to you too and vice versa, Momonga explained. Miriama and Kates looked at him with their jaws slowly loosening their hinges. Wait, so you lost your memories? Miriama frantically asked. Momonga nodded as he gave her a sad smile. Yes, the pervert you know is dead, so to speak. Kates cupped her mouth. Miriama stared at him stupefied. What? How did you lose your memories? Were you in an accident? Miriama shouted, this time with a tone of grave concern. It was probably the first time he saw a girl concerned about his well-being. Well, Issei's well-being. I was murdered a few weeks ago. I woke up in a pool of my own BLD with scars on my stomach. Momonga informed her as he lifted up his shirt, showing the nasty darkened mark where Rainier admitted she stabbed with her light spear. Momonga managed to hide his scar from Issei's parents and the other male classmates during the gym via simple illusion magic. The Kendo duo was the first from Kyo Academy to witness this scar. They looked at it with horror and sympathy upon the realization, utterly convinced by his truth-mixed lie. And when I woke up, I found out I had powers, which were probably awakened post-mortem. As for my powers, I'm not sure how to explain how it works. It is not instinctual knowledge, but more like finding newfound awareness of what I can do. Since waking up, I've been training to make the best of my newfound powers while tracking down the one responsible. I did succeed in finding the culprit, who was an actual fallen angel. And yes, before you ask, turns out supernatural does exist. Angels exist. Demons, too. His lie-infested answer somehow, at this point, transitioned into an instinctive rant that nearly knocked the girls off their seats with the sheer absurdity of the daily activities of his secret life. Offeyes did not seem surprised, only curious. And? Cates asked with a shaky voice. How'd you find your way back home? I mean, when you woke up? That Momonga could answer with clarity. Waking up in a puddle of my own BLD was kind of a shocking experience. I had to fish my own ID out of my pockets to learn my name and age. It was a very interesting experience. I had to wander around for some time before I found my back home. None of this was an actual lie, especially the last part, maybe the last part. Then I was trying to figure out what was happening right before something just clicked and I just acted on that feeling. That was the moment I managed to use a spell for the first time. Anyways, after digging into the circumstances of my condition, I have encountered something that I honestly thought belonged only to fairy tales. It's a long and very twisted story, one which leads us to this point in the end, so yeah. And you just went along with it? Waking up and then just using magic, and not once did you try to figure out the hows or whys? Cates voiced her confusion with a figurative question mark hovering above her head. Who said I thought it wasn't new or unusual? Amnesia, remember? Momonga shrugged with a deadpan expression, shirking the question in avoidance. I thought I was a sorcerer before someone punched a hole through my stomach. Or maybe I was the local version of the Chosen One and was almost assassinated by the agents of the local equivalent of the Dark Lord. Momonga added that part as an elusive mockery to strengthen his point. Without knowing these small details, much to my chagrin, I decided that sitting on it was my best course of action since my answers would come to me sooner or later. Whether I should be surprised or nonchalant no longer matters at this point. All that matters is finding the truth in the end. Momonga wasn't precisely lying. He had no clue how his spells and skills worked in exquisite detail. All he knew was their effects, how to properly use them, and that he could cast them with ease like before in Yggdrasil. The process of executing these spells and skills was handled by the system that came with him, performing most of the work for him. So Momonga must start from square one with the magics he must manually cast himself, like the devil magic, as the three idiots labeled for instance. Oh right, Miriama and Cates looked at each other, exchanging gazes as they sat in silent contemplation. As if confirming something, the two gave back Momonga their attention before Miriama spoke. Then, why did you send us here in the first place? It is not every day a wizard shoved someone through a portal into their secret base. Is it wizard or sorcerer now that I think about it? Are you a wizard? Cates asked with curiosity. I think wizard. As for Miriama's question, that is not difficult to answer. But I am not sure if you'll like the answer. Momonga now had to gently word that he sent him here to protect them from the equivalent of nuclear fallout. Why wouldn't we? You make it sound like it is very bad, is it? The pink-haired girl gave a nervous chuckle as she looked at Miriama in search of emotional security. You have absolutely no idea. Momonga could not stress how close they were in becoming collateral damage. Very well, then. Now, give me a moment. I need to find where to start. Explaining to them the summary would leave them traumatized and fearful of Gothic Lolitas if he told them about the unfair dragon god with the same name as a wish-granting world item. He still wondered if Offeyes had the power to grant a world-level wish, but considering her need for an army to take down a similar world enemy-type being, that was probably beyond even her power, lest she would have created an army of super beings herself. Momonga turned to Offeyes, who was looking at him emotionlessly as always. To explain the dangers I am facing, here is one example. A few days prior, I encountered a devil. In case you want to know, devils are a term for a species of powerful creatures that looked almost completely human, although most of them have bat wings which they can hide in their spines somehow. Momonga found a way to lead the conversation to ask how the hell Offeyes managed to find him, using Deodora as his start. Apparently, he was there to kill me for reasons I will not reveal. but I will say that they're very, very dumb. There were no excuses in all of reality that could justify Deodora's motivations, even if God somehow took his side. That bstrd deserves to die 1,000 deaths for what he had done so far. Long story short, he came to me in bright daylight, lead me to an alley, tried to murder me. Then I killed him with prejudice. Afterward, I got rid of the body and escaped the crime scene after covering my tracks. Somehow, that encounter laid the trail for this girl sitting beside me to find me. Which now brings the question. Momonga turned to Offeyes, finding his chance to grasp some answers to her discovering him. How did you find I killed Deodora, anyways? Offeyes only stared at Momonga for a moment before answering much faster than he expected. Snake. Huh? Momonga's brain suffered a massive lag. His expectations broke like glass from a falling hammer. It took his 5 whole seconds to parse that one word, 5 more seconds to find the right word to respond. What? Wait. Please define snake. Momonga had no idea how a snake could be a leak. Why was a snake the reason for his blunder? That made no sense. Snakes don't even live in metropolitan areas as far as he knew, even before when the pollution dammed the earth and massacred all wildlife. However, as if to further answer his question, Offeyes raised her hand at him as a snake slithered out of her sleeve, black as the clothes on her person with coal-black beady eyes staring at Momonga while flicking its forked tongue at him. This once belonged to Deodora. It told me about you, she explained. Momonga stared at the snake long and strong, trying to remember anything related to a snake on Deodora's person, until he recalled the secondary MP bar. Wait, what does the snake do? Momonga asked. It gives you power, Offeyes simply explained. Then it finally clicked. Oh, it was then Momonga realized why he couldn't find the source of the secondary MP bar. This thing somehow managed to get away from him under his nose, probably when he was busy draining the soul out of that guy. He felt as if a massive burden left his shoulders like he had found enlightenment. He had goofed without knowing it, and when he found the cause, it was refreshingly anticlimactic. In short, he had messed up because of a simple oversight, because he allowed vengeance to blind him long enough for the witness to flee. Although, to Momonga's credit, who would have thought a prick devil would house a symbiotic snake in his person? So, how does one gain strength from these? Are you supposed to let it bite you or you eat it? Oh, that shattered his conceptions of gaining strength through a snake. The last thing any seasoned player would conclude was eating the thing to gain power. Was this snake some kind of living super drag or something? Do you want one? Offeyes asked, her eyes almost sparkling for some reason. If I do, then does that mean I must join your faction? Momonga asked, his face now deadpanned. Yes. Then, no, you may keep your snake to yourself. Momonga refused to join a terrorist group of psychopaths. The detriments severely outweigh the benefits. Although, Offeyes' reaction was pouting at Momonga as the snake withdrew into her sleeve like a turtle to its shell. Why? Offeyes asked, still pouting at Momonga. Do you not want strength? Well, Momonga took a look at the girls, giving them an awkward smile and mentally apologizing for leaving them in the dark. I am a very complicated teenager. Yes, I do longing strength, but that is just one of my many desires. As much as it pains me to say, unlike the others you have recruited, I am not so simple to be swayed by mere power alone. Careful wording was critical here. Bluntness is the line separating tragedy from success. Momonga was in unknown territory here, so he must tread as cautiously and effectively the best he could, else he would fall in one of the pit traps along the way. 2 snakes? Offeyes offered as if doubling her offer in an auction house. Now that he looked at her, Momonga nearly snorted at how adorable her attempt was. It was then his lightbulb lit on, an idea crossed his mind. He weighed the pros and cons for just a split second and decided to gamble everything on this one. Offeyes, Momonga took a deep breath, preparing himself to probe Offeyes of her profile. Is there any value in returning back to the empty void between worlds? What do you need from the silence so much that you gathered a questionable following to wage war against another almighty being? Especially when there is absolutely nothing waiting for you there. Momonga decided to start with her life goals. He felt like that career consultant that one time he met before graduating from elementary school. It was a very sad time of his life for him when he learned that he would fall behind those his age. Off-Eyes stared at him for a moment in stoic thought. It is noisy here. Noisy? Reviewing what he learned about her so far, Momonga could almost see where she was coming from. How long have you lived in that place? Long time, she answered succinctly. With no one else there in the void? All alone? Yes. That was enough to conclude her background, one that aroused a terrifying realization. So she was a shut-in from BRTH, judging by her story now, she must come here rarely, if at all. Momonga was already putting the pieces together now. She was so used to silent solitude, no one interacting with her as her overwhelming power superseded the need for company, that she had never matured for apparently billions of years. Off-Eyes was as naive as a child isolated from society for countless eons. No wonder the maniacs managed to sway her. She must have come across one of them by sheer chance. Hell, the ones that were sane most likely turned her down, allowing those maniacs the chance to use her without her knowing. Every word that came out of her mouth only served to pile on his growing worries. It was reaching the height of Mount Everest at this point. Off-Eyes, how do you plan on reclaiming your home anyways? He asked, almost as if demanding from growing concern. Get people to fight him. Off-Eyes simply replied. Her words made Momonga cringe with fear, not for himself but the world. That's it? No long-term plan to slay the godly dragon once and for all? No tactics, strategies, anything? He had a horrible feeling about this. They can do it for me. His bad feeling was right. No, it was as evident as daylight. Oh God, I need to do something. Momonga could see the encroaching disaster from the distance that will befall her one way or another. Knowing this world and the bullshit he faced so far, if something like Off-Eyes came to be, then there was most likely a very, very overpowered tool here on this planet that would allow the maniacs to defeat her. If this world was as bullshit as he thought it was, then there must be something as equally bullshit as Off-Eyes, one that can touch her. She probably had never been in a proper fight since her beginnings. She was a walking world item of world items ripe for the taking. Off-Eyes, allow me to express my opinion openly. Would you give me your utmost attention? Off-Eyes tilted her head, confused for a moment before nodding slowly. After giving your plans much meticulous thought, I have concluded that your plan is critically flawed. No matter how I see this, it is destined to fail. He threw all of his cautions out the window. There was no room for it. The girl was basically inviting Armageddon to the world without even knowing it, and he must act now and fix the growing cracks before they ruin this world. He would demon himself to hell before allowing another world to fall into ruin if he had any say in it. Off-Eyes, I know you are strong, so strong you can break this world unopposed, I think, but please listen to me when I say you are making a very big mistake. Your acquaintances, for lack of a better word, won't actually help you. They will, and I am 100% confident when I say this, betray you one way or another, and most likely succeed. I don't know how, but I am more than sure that they will find a way to defeat you when you don't know it instead. They aren't fighting for you, Off-Eyes. They are using you. Either way, you won't get your home back from that dragon. Your plans are like a castle made of sand, easy enough for the wind to take down. Momonga started monologuing and half-venting all the retorts he had on her life goals and methods to her face as gently as he could. She might hate him for it, but she needs to hear this. She needs someone to teach her some common sense. Off-Eyes stared at Momonga for a moment. He was sure the girl was digesting every word he said so far at once. He waited for 5 more seconds before Off-Eyes finally gave her thoughts. So how should I defeat him? She asked. She gave his words her scrutiny and consideration. Momonga sighed openly, relieved that she didn't lash out in anger. Off-Eyes was confused. There were too many new things to consider and too little time to process them as she looked at the complicated anomaly that sat beside her. He looked like a male human, young, but it was strangely both true and not true, and she could not exactly tell what he was with how his presence seemed to shift. A dragon? A strong one that was young, but seemed to be somehow familiar but unfamiliar at the same time. She could feel the presence, the smell, and the aura of one that could probably fight some of those who she considered strong. Some of those who joined her were weaker than he was. It was confusing, and she did not know how to react. Her mind felt strangely on alert whenever her thoughts drifted to him, but not in a way that Issei was used to. What did she want from him? He was strong enough, but she could not give him something he did not longing. Others favored her for her power, agreeing to fight the Red One alongside her in exchange for only that. Her eyes were peering through the strange and numerous magics applied to his being, obscuring, hiding, deceiving, and outright lying in some cases to anyone else who would try to perceive his true nature. Issei saw beyond them, the hazy outline of a young human within a tall skeletal figure with glowing red eyes and wearing a grand robe, with 2 crimson orb-bearing spalders that bore no markings. She was confused as to how he was even alive. He was not like that strange skeleton from Mount Olympus that also seemed to want to join her group, but there was something about him that felt almost artificial yet alive at the same time. Issei thought that maybe she could restore his memories, but that was something she was not sure she could do. So she kept silent, her eyes locked on the spectral form near her. His questions were different. While others asked her what she could do for them, this one asked what she wanted and showed actual intentions of wanting to aid her in his way. Different, strange, she did not know how to respond, and her power offered no solution to this confusion. She could not erase him as it felt wrong for reasons beyond her understanding. It only left her with observing him and trying to find out why she felt the need to keep him alive, why she needed to understand this anomaly. One thing that she could tell was that the painful feeling of being outside of the dimensional gap was not as strong when she was focusing on him. Was his presence radiating the same feel of silence? No, the annoying noise was still present. It was just pushed away from her whenever she focused on his presence and nothing else. Like he was the silence, but not exactly. Confusing, unexpected, curious. Issei never asked for permission. Nobody could forbid her anything as nobody was strong enough to stop her. So when she decided to do something, she just did it. Thus, when she rotated her upper body and latched onto her target's torso with an iron grip, she felt no reason why she shouldn't have done that in the first place. The feeling grew slightly stronger, the presence of something that was like silence but different, and made things better than they were before. Issei ignored everything else. With ease she searched for it, but the strange thing was elusive and escaped her grasp. For the first time in her life she felt frustrated, and that made her think. The anomaly stated that her mindset and method were incorrect, and that's why she was failing. If that was true, then changing them should bring better results. Issei blanked her mind while also trying to block all the noise, and it was as if she was alone once more, but with the anomaly still in her grasp. The feeling that tormented her for so long slightly faded as the presence of the anomaly washed over her mind without her resisting it. What was it? She knew silence. It would never change, but there was the part of it that she was so accepting of. The aura of the anomaly brought something else. For the first time in her existence, Issei felt longing, a longing for more. A whisper of a promise in her mind as she dived deeper and deeper into the presence that was flooding her mind. The potential to gain something more than silence, something better than silence. Could it be possible? Issei was confused, and ruminating over this confusion felt terrible. So she simply ignored those questions. The only thing she did know was that she very slowly was getting what she now desired, and everything else was of no essence to her. Issei wanted silence. But now, Issei wanted Issei too. Issei? Is there something wrong? Issei was hugging his waist. Momonga had no idea why she would hug him. He was about to give out a plan he hastily threw together. It involved searching for an ancient weapon that could draw BLD from an omnipotent dragon, possibly another sacred gear or something like that. Scour the globe for anything related to the killing of dragons at the very least, level up and train like hell, and then attempt to assemble a raid team while preparing for the fight of their very lives. And that is if Momonga couldn't convince her to abandon her quest of becoming a shut-in. As much as he wanted to try his hand in facing this world's version of a world enemy, he wasn't sure if he could even reach the level needed to harm something like that. Issei was comparison enough, and her presence alone alarmed his danger senses, and they were as rusty as a blade left in acid, if not for his newly acquired dragon instincts. That was more than enough indication for Momonga to strive not to go throw himself into the dragon's realm. However, before he could enlighten her on his basic plan, Issei suddenly hugged him. He has no idea why she would do that. She wasn't even responding while latching onto his waist. This is awkward. He was at a loss. Her unexpected hug threw him off track as he looked at the girls again. They were as equally confused as him, probably even more so since they have no idea what the conversation was about. Asia was looking at him with trembling eyes. Why was she looking very sad? You feel like home. Offeyes finally answered with cryptic nonsense. Momonga could not put himself and the word home together. Was she saying that his presence was like the dimensional gap? He furiously flipped through the pages of his memory on his current powers, the updated Yggdrasil system that survived with him, and his current state of being. He knew he was part undead. Well, mostly undead. He can devour souls and steal the levels of his victims if they're strong enough. He was somehow part dragon and partially alive, for some reason. He then flipped to his time researching the concept of necromancy and undeath in general through the internet. He did it to arm himself with the necessary know-how to recreate his necromantic and death spells through his devil magic. The process was still pending with no practical results in application, but he did learn some interesting concepts behind undeath in return. According to some sources, an undead could also equate to being a spiritual black hole in a manner of speaking, this one being from a page of Dungeons and Dragons. Since he was undying, half undying, he cannot tell. He was like the void depending on one's point of view. Could his power be related to the dimensional gap or the void in general? He did not think so since the dimensional gap and negative energy are two different concepts, unless it was something purely from Yggdrasil. Actually, that might be a good place to start. At least he found another lead to how he came here from this confusing series of events. Now, back to dealing with the overpowered lowly that could kill him with a thought, probably. Anyways, Offeyes, after careful thought, I have a few ideas on how to get started to help you in your quest to slay a dragon god, but I will only help if you allow it. However, it is only if you don't force me to join your organization, and if you keep our relationship a secret from others. Is that all right with you? Momonga asked, hoping that she would at least give his offer some deliberation. Okay. That was way too fast. Her amiableness baffled his expectations. Only if you let me stay with you. The girl then buried her head into his torso. He wasn't sure if he should deem her adorable or be more confused. For some reason, he could hear Asia whimpering. He really hoped that she would stop giving him those trembling eyes. They hurt his soul. As for Offeyes, was his affinity with the void that strong of an impact on her? He would have to ask once he gained enough of her trust. Very well. Offeyes, you may now consider me a member of your party, not as your mercenary, but your ally. He added that for good measure. He could have asked for a snake, but it would only weaken the pitch of his persuasion. Plus, he did not want to dull his gamer spirit with more bullshit. He had yet to MSTR the powers he did have fully, anyways. So alright folks, that's all for today. Stay tuned for part 6. Do subscribe, like and share for more such videos. Also check out the story and author I4MD347H and Zaralann on FANFICTIONnet. Press the bell icon to be notified first on release. See you in the next video. Till then, goodbye.